inviting me to speak to you. I also want to thank Professor Newton and colleagues, friends. We need to acknowledge that the work that Impact Youth is doing, not only in St. Lucia, but throughout the entire region. The work in terms of harmonizing our legislations, ensuring that there is excellent pedagogy and learning for the profession. It is a work in progress, and Professor Newton, you're doing an excellent job. I really do want to publicly commend you for that work, as many of us will be working with you. It would be remiss of me not to bring greetings from President Sharon McGregor, who is the president of the Jamaican Bar Association. She has asked me to bring greetings to all of you and from the Jamaican Bar. So, I'm here to quickly speak to you about continuing legal professional development, the Jamaican experience. And before I get into the presentation, those of you who are interested in this area, because I understand this is something that many countries have grappled with, and certainly St. Lucia and St. Lucia attorneys are not late to this debate. As a matter of fact, these are debates that only recently concluded in Jamaica in 2013. They're presently ongoing in India, and they've been debating it for many years without resolution. And other countries have made their decisions, but it is your decision as St. Lucia attorneys to make. We can make suggestions, we can guide, but ultimately the decision remains with St. Lucia. Professor Preena Chopra from India has an excellent article which I'll commend to you, and it's simply called this: Continued Professional Legal Education in India. And this was a 2010 article. What's interesting about it is that Professor Chopra says this: on the one hand, in the legal profession, professional development has traditionally been considered a one-time affair, occurring at the stage of pre-service education. You went to university for, in our case, many of us 5 years, some longer. It really is up to me. If I want to serve my clients well, it behooves me to then study. And if I don't want to, so be it. And that was what influenced the profession for many, many years. This is all over the world. Increasingly, we live in changing times, and they're changing professional needs and demands, as all of you know. And that has compelled some kind of reflection on the need for in-service or on-the-job professional development. And so on the other hand, Chopra posits that law being a dynamic field, it is imperative for the working professionals to stay abreast of the latest developments, which have a direct nexus with the subject, and I will add the practice that we also depend on, and our own livelihood and perhaps profitability. So the developments affects not only the bar, but the bench. Of course, ultimately, litigants. Hence, to serve the greater cause of justice, continuing professional legal development is essential. And that was her conclusion. And I'll just take you on a further journey to our colleague, Professor Muna Ndula, who wrote an article in the Penn State International Law Review, volume 20, entitled Legal Education in Africa. I won't quote from Professor Ndula, but I again urge all of you, what's interesting about her article is that she traces continuing legal education historically through many Commonwealth African countries. And they so closely resemble how our legal profession has evolved that I urge and commit to everyone here that sort of reading. Finally, my colleague from Jamaica, who heads our Jamaican Human Rights Council, and at one stage was a director of ACWA, the Organization of Commonwealth Caribbean Bar Associations, Nancy Anderson, sums it up this way, and I agree with her. The legal profession, individually and collectively, have an obligation to meet the current needs and modern challenges by fostering schemes which provide a well-ordered system of continuing legal education. And so that's the kind of thinking that informed Jamaica and how we proceeded. Now, most jurisdictions, the United States, UK, Canada, Australia, who we often quote, and South Africa, who we rely on. But I'll also add Mexico, Brazil, many Latin American countries, Asia, the Philippines, all of them, some as recently as 2 years ago, have put in place mandatory continuing legal professional development, i.e., to practice, you have to get a certain amount of work. Jamaica, of course, has followed that, and I will briefly share with you what we've done in Jamaica. Israel, on the other hand, doesn't have a mandatory scheme. And what happens is that it's entirely voluntary in Israel. What has happened, though, is that most lawyers practicing in Israel do attend CLPD because they realize there is a benefit to it. So they haven't seen the need to make it mandatory. And there are a few other countries like Israel. And I'm throwing it out to you that you can go one way, you can go another, but it is the decision for St. Lucia. So, quickly on a journey to Jamaica. We implemented mandatory continuing legal professional development in January 2013 by amendments to our Legal Profession Act and regulations. It's based heavily on jurisdictions such as the UK and in particular New South Wales and Australia. So the legal basis is our Legal Profession Act and a new piece of legislation called the Legal Profession Continuing Legal Professional Development Regulations 2013, and we realized there were some hiccups with the 2013 regulations. There were some things that needed to be corrected, and we quickly dealt with it in 2014. I'll also point out to you that there are still hiccups, which I think require certain things to be amended. So, compliance with CLPD in Jamaica, which means continuing legal professional development, is a condition precedent to obtaining a practicing certificate. And it is in other words, you need to apply in 2013 to get your 2015 certificate. So there's a year in which to complete, prove that you have done it, but if you don't satisfy 2013, you won't get a 2015 certificate, 2014 to 2016, and so on and so forth. Each attorney is required, therefore, by the March the 1st of each year, to report and file with our General Legal Counsel a CLPD return form. And this is all statutory, and the form is there for all to see. It's available online on the General Legal Counsel website. Of course, like any sort of mandatory scheme, it's best to have exemptions for certain people who will apply for it. So for instance, perhaps due to illness, the fact that you're a Jamaican attorney but you're and you want to maintain your Jamaican practicing status, but you're practicing overseas. And this happens, you have regionalism, you have folks that would be Jamaican come right here to St. Lucia. But they're saying, listen, I am not practicing in Jamaica. I want to maintain my status, you can apply for an exemption. Or you are doing a lot, you're teaching at a law school, you're a professor, and you're doing so much work that perhaps an exemption is warranted. But again, you have to apply for that sort of exemption. And again, I'm sorry that I don't know if all of you can see this, but the system, like many other systems around the world, is based on credits. So each attorney must obtain a certain number of credits annually. This can be obtained from various excellent presentations by Mr. Gordon, and you listen, you ask questions, you participate. Usually the seminar is for 2 hours. The rule of thumb has tended to be you get 1 credit for each hour, but that's a rule of thumb. It can differ depending on what is set by the accreditation committee. But you can also teach, you can write articles, you can present and attend legal seminars, you can train, you can do electronic things, you can watch videos. Whatever you do, you need to make an application. Unless it's pre-accredited by the General Legal Counsel, you need to apply to say, listen, I wrote this article, how many points do I get? So for example, I've written a couple of times in the JAMBAR Journal, and I applied and received a certain amount of points. I teach company law at the Norman Valley Law School, and I get half my points for the year from doing that sort of teaching. Some private law firms in Jamaica, because the one thing that you all appreciate is that what we sell, folks, the commodity is broken down in time. And the one thing to spend a lot of time outside the office can be problematic to all of us. And so there are some firms that have organized their own internal systems and apply and have received accreditation for it. There are some folks who will watch videos and submit the videos and say, listen, we have sat and watched these things. And the thing about it is, there was initially a thought that we need to see you in our room. But I can tell you that there are a number of you in here that you all are paying quite good attention, but you'll see folks in Jamaica playing Candy Crush. Once in a while, you're whispering to somebody to get the password and go on and check what's going on and snap Twitter out of this phone. And so the point is that you really have to trust our colleagues. This is my thing. To marshal them, I can come into a room and pay absolutely no attention. But I can come into a room and pay attention. So it really, we're all professionals, and certainly my colleague tells me I've watched this video. And here it is. Accredited. That's mine. So there's also a differentiation for younger attorneys. So attorneys in their first 3 years of practice have to get 16 credits, 6 of which have to be ethics and client welfare, and 2 in business management. The other 8 can be in other areas. Attorneys from their 4th year of practice onwards have to get 12 credits, but 4 must be for ethics courses or client welfare courses. So typically what happens in Jamaica is that most attorneys attend seminars. Most last 2 hours, 1 credit per hour, as I said before. Most presentations are about 2 hours. So attorneys who are over 3 years at the bar and who do no other CLP activity, they don't teach, they don't publish, they only go to seminars, would normally attend 6 seminars per year, 1 every 2 months on average. What happens is that the Bar Association and the GLC, because again time is at a premium, what will happen is that we put on weekend seminars where you can sit with your colleagues for 1 weekend. There's a social element to it, but by going 3 are put on 1 day, 3 the next. You have concurrent sessions going on so you can cherry pick which areas you're interested in. But in 1 weekend you could get all the seminars, all the points that you need for the year. Now, Mike Hilton, when I was president of the Jamaican Bar, Mike Hilton, my colleague, was the president, or was chairman of the General Legal Counsel, which administered the CLPD program as well as other issues pertaining to Jamaican attorneys, regulatory issues. And he said this, in setting a system up, 2 things are indispensable for success, and I certainly agree with him. 1 is a credible accreditation body and process. Somebody needs to monitor it. And secondly, presentations that are varied, relevant, affordable, accessible, and a high quality. I would add a third, which really relates to his second point. I feel that, particularly for as time is at a premium, that one thing that Jamaica has fallen down on, although the regulations allow for it, is the use of technology. And I think it's very important that I remembered a few years ago, there was a fellow attorney from Miami came to Jamaica to do a transaction. And after we finished along the road, he said, hey, let me take you out for dinner. He says, Don, thanks, went out to dinner last night. This evening I'm going back to my hotel room to do my CSPD. So your hotel room? He says, yes. I have this job drive. I've received it from the Florida bar. I'm going to stick it into our computer, and I'm going to watch a 2-hour thing. During the 2-hour program, embedded in his thing that he received are particular code numbers. You need to watch, write the code numbers down, upload it, and your certificate is printed. Now, again, coming back to my issue of when I suggested that to one of the architects of this in Jamaica, his response was, well, you could send your son or your daughter or your secretary to watch it right down the codes and thing. And I said, well, you could. But I respectfully suggest that most of us won't, because we want the learning. Because, and you know, we're supposed to be at least an honorable profession, and perhaps I'm naive, I still feel we are. So he conceded that, and one thing that I would say, you're grappling with it, put a lot of effort on the use of technology. We don't all need, it's great to see everybody together, it's a great social tool, but if time is at a premium, those that can't do it, the technology is there, let's use it. Other jurisdictions have. So, the role of our General Legal Counsel. I do not know if in St. Lucia you have a body like that. Perhaps you do, you don't, I'm not sure. But they have a provider role, and there are other providers. For instance, the Bar Association provides seminars. The universities and the law schools in Jamaica provide seminars. They're also the regulator in terms of accrediting, and they're also the accreditor. And the accreditation committee comprises 9 members, attorneys, and judges. I won't, partly because you can't see this, I was just going to briefly explain to everyone what the role of the General Legal Counsel was. And basically you have a chairman, you have a disciplinary committee that deals with any disciplinary matters with attorneys, you have a CEO, you have, of course, the secretarial administrative part, there's the CLPD part, there's the investigations part, which has to do with financial compliance, and there is a general counsel, which is an attorney to the GLC, and of course others. So the CLPD program, or part, is part of a wider regulatory body in Jamaica. So, of course, when we were doing this, and the one thing with attorneys I have found, and it's good, and perhaps it's inherent in us, any change to our profession is going to cause some opposition, some concern, and as far as I'm concerned, that's great. Let's all talk and debate this thing. And there was a great deal of opposition in Jamaica, even threats of legal action, you know, and the GLC persevered and they committed to presenting enough papers and on mandatory topics and offering them at different venues around the country. So, since some stats for you, since 2013, the GLC has presented 80 seminars throughout Jamaica. The Bar Association has presented about 70 seminars. University of West Indies 10. And the vast majority were on substantive law topics. But it's not only law topics that can be accredited. I mean, we have partnered with the MAJ to deal with ethical issues, bioethics. And we have partnered with the ICAJ, which is the accountants, to focus on certain tax issues. Of course, there will be a substantive legal issue, but you can accredit topics that are not strictly legal, because learning in that for an attorney who practices in tax, there's benefit to it. There's benefit to all learning. So, as I said, there are many CLPD accredited entities. The main ones providing it in Jamaica are the General Legal Counsel, as the regulator itself, and the Bar Association. So what are some of the lessons that we have learned in Jamaica, which I'll just share with you? You need to appoint an accreditation committee early. Set it up. You need to make your important policy decisions early as to who is going to be exempted and what sort of exemptions. One thing that I think is a mistake in Jamaica, presently we have every year you need to have accreditation. You need to be accredited. You need to file a return to say, I have done these courses in 1 year. In most other jurisdictions, New South Wales, I think it's 3 years. Certain Canadian provinces, it's 3 years. Florida, it's 3 years that you need to satisfy, you need to file a return. I think that it's tedious for us to be doing it every year. That's my view. This is something that can be debated. There are others that think it should be 2, some say 4. But again, it's an issue that 1 year, most people have agreed that this is tedious. And perhaps who it's most tedious on is the regulator itself, who really only has 2 employees. There are about 3,000 attorneys in Jamaica registered to practice, and they have to be going through returns of 3,000 attorneys, and it is time consuming and mistakes were made. So for instance, last year, because I did a lot of work, I had submitted and received accreditation. You're supposed to receive 12 points. I received 47 points. But I received a note last June, very strongly worded note, that I was not compliant for 2014. So I looked at this thing and said, okay, this is wrong. So I called the regulator, the actual person who is there, the administrator, who was so stressed. Oh Lord, Mr. Walker, I'm so sorry, I'm going to cry. And I know at least half of my law firm, we have about 17 attorneys in my firm, alone have received a letter like that, dead wrong. So I'm going to presume that hundreds of people have received that letter, because administratively a system has been set up which couldn't, we set up a system that couldn't, the system couldn't support the regulation. And by simply doing it every 3 years, it might give them the ability to deal with it better. Some things that they could have done better is prepare standard forms for the providers, which they now have done by the 2014 regulation. They could consider assisting certain providers with logistics and finalize and publish list of presentations earlier. The other thing that we could have done is had a concerted focus, which we didn't, because the main focus was on hosting seminars. And the argument by many members of the bar, which when I was president I was very sympathetic to, is this is a money-making thing for the GLC and for the bar. Because typically, you know, we tend to do it in a nice hotel like this one. Afterwards there are cocktails or refreshments served, and people are charged a fee. And so the complaint was that this is unfair to the younger members of the profession and some of the more senior ones who are not as actively in practice, and this is a money-making venture. Again, to do away with that kind of thinking, when I was president, and I'm glad that the current president, we tried to host at least 3 to 4 free seminars every year, particularly on controversial issues And so for next week, for we're calling about, this week about 300 new attorneys are being called in Jamaica. And we're hosting a free seminar for the new call, so they'll get 2 to 3 points. The president is speaking to them on ethical issues. I'm a panelist. A Supreme Court judge is a panelist, and the Chief Justice is a panelist. And we try to have seminars like that. And that has gone a far way to encourage our members and members of the profession to realize that, look, this is not simply a money-making venture. The learning is key. Another thing that we need to think of is regionalism in all of this, because a lot of what happens could be applicable to practice in St. Lucia, and certainly the learning from expert attorneys in St. Lucia is very relevant to Jamaica. I mean, I asked Mr. Gordon if he could share with me his presentation, which didn't ask why, so I'm going to tell him why. And the why was that I would like to share it with the chairman of our Bar CLE committee, with a view to encouraging them to have you come either to present directly to our seminars or to be on a panel at our invitation. And I hope that, as you can see, I've forgiven you for the UCL quit. As a fellow golfer, I'm sure you're a better golfer. You know, I think all is forgiven at the watering hole. So, prior to what advantage Jamaica has had is that prior to 2013, particularly led by leading counsel Dr. Lloyd Barnett, we have been doing CLEs for years, and they were not mandatory. Many people attended, many didn't. But I think on a balance, and this is my view, there is benefit to a CLPD program, and certainly a mandatory one. So what happens with what we try to do in Jamaica?